All right, Steeler fans, welcome back. I say welcome back because you heard my voice earlier this morning on the Let's Ride podcast here on this Wednesday. The Steelers are reporting to training camp as we speak and as we record this, and they're going to do their run test this afternoon. They're back, and it's exciting. But when you hear my voice a second time in the same day, it means that we've heard from our source, and that's exactly what we're here to talk about, all about the offensive line. And to join me, our offensive line guru, Dave Schofield. What's up, Dave? How's it going?
Oh, not much. I'm just happy to talk O-line. You know that anytime I'm ready to do it, let's get into it.
So I think the one big premise here that we want to focus on from the sourced information to you, the fan, the listener out there, and how you're going to consume this is we all have this premise and this thought, this maybe a false thought that the Steelers will always just want to ease their rookies in. You think as last year is a great example, the 2023 rookie class. You had Broderick Jones who had to wait. He got a spot start at left tackle and then took over at right tackle for Chukwuekorfor in week 5 or 6, I believe. And then Joey Porter Jr. had to wait his turn, and then he finally was inserted in the lineup. And a lot of times we just assume this is the Steelers' MO. And so now you have the top 2 draft picks along the offensive line and Troy Fautanu out of Washington and Zach Frazier out of West Virginia University. And you're saying, well, are they going to be viable options in week 1? Are they viable to win the starting job? Well, what we're hearing from inside the organization is that there are plenty of people who think that Troy Fautanu can win his spot on the offensive line. He's going to have to earn it. That's going to be the ultimate theory here, is that both these players are going to have to earn it, but he's going to have to win his spot. Now, when I say win his spot, it's with Dan Moore Jr., but it's not necessarily a head-to-head battle. Everyone is assuming like, well, Dan he's not comfortable on the right side. He's openly stated that. They have no interest in putting him there. But if Troy Fautanu can prove his worth on the right side, it would allow Broderick Jones to move to the left. And that would be your anchors, bookend tackles on the right and left side with Fautanu on the right side, who's openly already stated today when he met with the media before going into the dorms at St. Vincent College that the right side, it's different footwork, but he's been training for it, practicing for it. Before we go on to the center position, Dave, what are your thoughts upon hearing that in terms of the tackle position?
Yeah, that's interesting. It's because there's certain things in there that we can say, okay, that's not what we were thinking. And some of it's like, well, that doesn't exactly clear it up with, well, for first, the one thing I've been saying about where Broderick Jones starts the season has less to do with Broderick Jones and more about the other 2 guys and who's going to be the other tackle because they want Fautanu on the right. Dan Moore's more comfortable on the left. So Broderick Jones is the guy that can do either. So that's part of it. Now, it was actually week 9 when he got his first start at right tackle last year. Okay. Now, it was their 8th game because they'd already had their bye week because that was after the whole Jacksonville thing with Chooks and whatnot.
Yes.
But as you're telling me this information, I'm one who's been saying for a long time, remember how the Steelers treat their rookies. Remember that. We saw it last year with Broderick Jones. We saw it with Joey Porter Jr. We didn't see it as much with Keanu Benton because when I say rookies, I mean they're highly drafted, first 2 rounds. Benton got to play more because of the injury to Cam Hayward, but he still didn't go over half the snaps of the game until the middle of the season. That was the same week that Jones started. So, but he wasn't someone that was on the field all the time. So we could see that, especially when you're talking offensive line in those top 2 picks. It's an all or nothing position for the most part. And when you look at it now, we're hearing, hey, they might not be moving these guys along. You called it last Friday on your Let's Ride where you're saying, hey, Broderick Jones came in. He was young last year. He needed some time. Fautanu and Jones are the same age. He's just out a year later. And we knew that Broderick Jones was raw and didn't have very many starts under his belt. So that means Fautanu, they feel, was more ready, more prepared based on what he did in college. And that's someone that they don't have to, quote unquote, protect him from himself in the long season of an NFL season after jumping from college.
Yeah, so they have more starts under their belt. I think that's the important factor. And also, let's also not forget the underlying theme here is that they're going to have to earn it. If Troy Fautanu comes out in practices and training camp and falls flat on his face, they're not just going to hand him a starting job.
No.
If that happens, Dan Moore is going to be left tackle, Broderick Jones is going to be right tackle, and that's how they're going to start the season. But they're leaving it open that Fautanu can, and some are expecting him to, earn that spot on the right side, which would allow Broderick Jones to move to the left side. So let's go to the other position on the offensive line. That would be center. Zach Frazier, again, a lot of experience, a lot of reps at center. It's going to be him versus Nate Herbig. And this is one that I think a lot of people are just kind of like, well, are we really considering Nate Herbig as a viable option? The Steelers view it as, yes, he is that veteran presence. He's had actual NFL experience at center, not a vast amount of experience, but he's had experience. They're going to have to prove it. But Zach Frazier has the look. He's got the feel of a starting center. The Steelers really like what he provides. I can say, just from my own opinion, Dave, I'll ask you yours here in a second. I see this as being more of a shoe-in than I do the tackle position. Do you agree or disagree?
I agree with you with that one. And I've said it, that one from the beginning, that, hey, if anyone's going to do it, it's going to be there. The Steelers did it with Marquise Pouncey when he showed he was that guy. And we basically know the floor. The floor at center is Nate Herbig. If Frazier is higher than that floor, it's Frazier. Same deal with the tackles. The floor is Dan Moore. If Fontana is better than that, then there you go. So you've got contingency plans both ways. Now, I said it leading up to the draft with everything about the center position when we knew the Steelers were going to take a center at some point. We hoped it would be higher, that they wouldn't wait till round 3 like they did in 2021. And I said, hey, even though Graham Barton is a quote unquote first round talent, I don't think he's as ready to go as Zach Frazier because he hadn't played center since his freshman year of college. Now, he still might be ready to go for Tampa Bay. We'll have to see how that works out, but he's not wearing black and gold, so I don't really care. But this is something that we knew about Frazier. One of the biggest upsides with him is so much experience at the position that it shouldn't have a big learning curve with him, and that would give him the opportunity to get onto the field faster than probably any other center that was in the draft outside of the one from Georgia that went much later. Yeah. He's the only one who had more experience in the position through college that was taken in the draft last year. So for me, with that at the center position, I've kind of thought that could very well be the case, but it would be more of an exception. I'm just happy to hear that the Steelers aren't making an exception. They're ready to go with it. And if I can kind of sum this up a little bit about both positions, if you don't mind, this kind of makes me think a little bit in 2021 when the Steelers didn't have the cap space because the salary cap went down. They started a ton of drafted players to start that season. My goodness, 2 on the offensive line. But those were 3rd and 4th round picks. These are now 1st and 2nd round picks. But either way, why were the Steelers not holding those guys back in 2021? They felt the time to go was now, because that was probably going to be and ended up being the final season for Ben Roethlisberger. So this also, to me, indicates a little bit of, hey, we're not gonna. This is for the future, but we're not holding it back. We're ready to say that this year is one that we can really make a splash and do something.
I agree, and I think this is kind of like a may the best man win proposition at both positions. But sticking with the center position before we kind of look at this from a global perspective, I look at Zach Frazier and say, my floor, you say it is Nate Herbig. I don't know what that looks like because I've never seen Nate Herbig in the center. So my floor is Mason Cole last year.
Yeah.
So can Zach Frazier snap the ball better than Mason Cole did last year? Can he protect against the big nose tackles that he struggled with last year? And if you have checks on both of those boxes, I think that what you would find is that is the floor. Nate Herbig could reach that floor as well. And so while the battle is between Herbig and Frazier, I look at the comparison of last season's center play at Mason Cole and think, Zach Frazier, I don't think that's a ridiculous bar to clear, in my opinion, because I was never that impressed with Mason Cole last year. I thought he struggled. We saw a lot of bad snaps. So it's going to be interesting. But again, the Steelers, they really like these 2 players, and Troy Fautanu and Zach Frazier. They drafted them high for a reason. And I just want to remind everyone out there, there's a lot of people, and I catch a lot of flack on Twitter, especially when we put out a Source podcast, or when I put out tweets saying like, hey, I spoke to the Source podcast coming soon, where people say, you guys are full of it. Your sources, you're making it up. Go back and check. Go back. I mean, you can scroll back on our feed as long as you want. And if
keep the receipts.
Mark the tape. We told you that the Steelers were doing more work on the offensive line this offseason than they ever have. And what do? They draft 3 offensive linemen in the 2024 class. You want to throw in Mason McCormick in the 4th round as well. They are investing in the trenches. They are investing in the future of that offensive line. We told you all that this is what was going to happen, and it comes to fruition yet again. So if you're listening to this, or if you're reading the article that I'm going to attach this podcast to on steelcurtainnetwork.com, and you're thinking, is this source even credible? Go back and check. We told you about Russell Wilson. We told you about Justin Fields. We've told you about so much stuff right here on the Steel Curtain Network that I don't think there's any question for those that have been tuned into us from day one of this offseason. I don't think there's any question about the credibility of our source. So the source is telling us it's going to be a battle. These two are going to have to earn it. But if you're out there listening and you're thinking, well, the Steelers don't play their rookies, with these two guys, you might have to think again. So, Dave, what are your final thoughts here?
Yeah, that's really my final thoughts is I'm one of those people that felt, I would love for them to be good enough and to be out there and everything else, but they're going to have to be so far way above everybody else for them to play them as a rookie because it's what the Steelers do. I'm quite relieved and excited to hear that, hey, if they're the best guy, they're going to play. We're not going to hold them back. I love that idea, especially for this season. I hope it doesn't come back to bite them at the end of the year. And if it does, guess what? They'll learn from that. They'll know that that's the way to do it. So it makes me go into camp with the whole idea of, hey, let's see, just bottom line is who's better, not who's head and shoulders. You can't keep them off the field better, just who's better. And I really like that. That's the way it's going to come down.
It's going to be interesting. We are going to have everything for you right here on the Steel Curtain Network on our podcast channel. Remember, if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, do me a favor, follow, subscribe so that you don't miss any of our podcasts like Dave's Pittsburgh Standard Time, which is coming up tomorrow, Thursday morning with Greg Benevent, any of my Let's Ride podcasts every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and all of our content right in one spot. It's totally free, and you're getting all this information right in that location. Also, check us out at steelcurtainnetwork.com. We're unveiling the Training Camp Confidential as we go throughout both Wednesday and Thursday. Some really great content in the written side. Go check us out at steelcurtainnetwork.com. But that does it. Our Steelers Source podcast. They have spoken. And so let's see how it plays out. In the meantime, we'll see you next time. Take it easy.